The big thing about preparation and success is the price has to be paid in advance. You have to put in the work before you get any results. If you can eliminate all those things, then you can actually make progress on being a better football player and winning games.
Was there ever a time where you kept a player on the roster who might not have made it from a talent level, but sheer work ethic sort of kept them around, not only because they were improving, but because they made everybody else prepare harder?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with Tom Brady.
When I thought about where to start, I think the place that came to mind was the sign you had in the Patriots facility. And as every employee walked in, they read these 4 things: do your job, work hard, be attentive, and put the team first.
Right.
Why did you want everybody in the organization to read that on the way into work?
Well, that's really our game plan every day. Didn't matter whether it was a day in the off season, a day in training camp, or the day before the AFC Championship game, or the day of the AFC Championship game. Those things never really changed. That we all had a job to do, whatever that happened to be, and every job was important. Every member of the team was important, that they do their job well. And being attentive and working hard is really the formula to getting better. That's how you improve. You figure out what it is you need to do better, and that's by being attentive and listening to people who can instruct you or help you get better, and then putting the work in to make that positive change. Then always thinking team first. That's always the most important thing. What do we need to do to win, and what can I do to contribute to the winning cause? And so regardless of what the task was, whether it was a coach, a player, a staff member, really any employee, it kind of fit for all of them. So, and again, because we played and practiced in the same facility, as I said, it didn't matter whether it was the AFC Championship game or whether it was a day in March or a day in June. It was the same every day. And so we strove for that consistency.
What does it mean to work hard? There was a term in your book that stuck out to me called eyewash.
Working hard, sometimes people can come in and put in their time and check the box. A player can come in, put on his gear, go out, run around, break a sweat, take a shower, and say, well, I practiced today. But if you don't really accomplish anything, then that really is not working hard. It's actually, we refer to it as a day off. No days off actually means, you come to work and you go to work. You don't come to work, check the box, kill the time, and then leave. You need to be productive while you're there. So, that it's really just a way of saying, yes, we're going to put in the work, but we need to accomplish the things that we set out to accomplish for that day, and then build on those tomorrow.
Was there ever a time where you kept a player on the roster who might not have made it from a talent level, but sheer work ethic sort of kept them around, not only because they were improving, but because they made everybody else prepare harder?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with Tom Brady. Tom Brady was a 4th-string quarterback his rookie year. He had 3 players ahead of him, and he just worked his way up. No team keeps 4 quarterbacks at any level, high school, college, the NFL. It's really almost unheard of. And he would be Exhibit A. Steve Neal, a guy who never played high school football, never played college football, was a wrestler in college, and then became an offensive guard, started for us for 7 years. Julian Edelman, who played quarterback in college and then became a receiver and a punt returner, 2 positions that he never played in college in the NFL, and became very good at them. So, yeah, absolutely. That work ethic and that day-to-day improvement, when you just stack those days together on top of each other for a sustained period of time, it levels out the talent. Sure, talent's important, but guys with a great work ethic and who really are committed to improving can catch a lot of players with more talent who don't work as hard.
Is there an example of a player who just had outrageous talent but didn't work hard at all, that sort of ended their career a lot earlier, or they never made it? They got to the big league and then they sort of just faded away.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are lots of them. Unfortunately, I referred to one of them in the book that, talked about coming in and being a running back and, being a combination of, 2 great running backs that were in the Hall of Fame. And, I think he had barely 100 yards in his entire career. So it's, talent's one thing, but the application of turning that talent into being a productive football player and a great teammate is it's hard to do. It's not that easy, and talent gets you through high school. It might get you through college, but once you get to the NFL level, that talent, that field levels out, and there are only a few players that have such elite talent that they don't have to work very hard and can stay better than a lot of their competitors. For the other 95%, if they don't stay on it, they're either going to get replaced, or in a lot of cases, players that don't trade hard will get injured and their careers will get cut short that way because they don't, commit to a good training regimen.
Are competitive people competitive everywhere? I think of like you, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, and you're always competitive in everything you're doing. And I'm wondering if that's a trait of hyper-competitive people or just the ones that reach the pinnacle of success.
No, I think it transcends everything. It's unbelievable how competitive guys are, literally over nothing. I mean, it could be for a T-shirt. There's guys are making millions of dollars, and it's for a T-shirt or not having to run a couple sprints or an hour later on curfew. They'll compete, and honestly, it isn't even necessarily for the prize at the end. It's just to be able to say, I won, I competed, and I beat you today. Or even if they don't win, just the love of the competition, the love of the prize. And fighting for that, the pride to say, hey, we would have a lot of kind of team competitive events like, for example, a trivia, or know your teammate, and ask questions about different teammates of, maybe what position they played in high school, or maybe another sport they play, or some other random fact about teammates, and play offense against defense, or the wide receivers against the DBs, or the O-line against the D-line, and the rookies against the veterans, and, create different competitions, and whether it was free throw shooting or cornhole or trivia, or, all different things like that. Guys that like to compete, love to compete. And it was a lot of fun actually to move some of the targets around for the competition. Some guys are good at free throws, some guys are good at trivia, some guys are good at, closest to the hole golf shots, whatever it is. But it's just fun to see them compete. One of the best things we did, Shane, was we would have usually one of our rookie offensive and defensive linemen would compete against each other to catch a punt. Right. So you put an offensive tackle and a defensive tackle back there, and you go one at a time, and the punter would punt, and, we'd make sure that it was at least 4 seconds hang time. So, the ball was up in the air, and then, whichever guy caught it first, then that group would win, and the other group would have to do extra sprints, or the group that won would get out of bed check, or, whatever it was. But it was a good way of team building because all the players were rooting for their guy who had never caught a punt in his life, probably, right? Watching Vince Wilfork and Matt Light back there catching punts, trying to track the ball and catch it. And of course I made him punt, so the returner had the sun in his eyes, had to deal with that. But to watch those guys do something they hadn't done before for some type of a reward, was a great team building exercise. And they love to compete. Competitors are the guys that really love to compete, are honestly the guys that get the most out of their talent, because they just are determined to work hard, prepare, and go right to the very end. They might not be as talented as somebody else, but they play and compete, to the max.
You mentioned The Last Dance in your book. What was your reaction to watching that?
I mean, I thought it was awesome. And, Jordan's one of the greatest competitors in any sport ever. And, his competitive spirit is, up there with the guys that he played with, like Lawrence Taylor at North Carolina. Those guys, they still compete all the time on the golf course. So, I thought it was, a great insight into it. Brady's a tremendous competitor. Julian Edelman, Brewski. When you talk about Brewski, came back from a stroke and continued to play. Some of those guys, Rodney Harrison. It's at an elite level, which it should be in the National Football League, but it's just at an elite level.
Most people think the key to a successful business is the product, but often the real secret is what's behind the product. the systems that make selling seamless. That's why millions of businesses, from household names to independent creators, trust Shopify. I'm not exaggerating about how much I love these guys. I'm actually recording this ad in their office building right now. Shopify powers the #1 checkout on the planet. It's simple, it's fast, and with Shop Pay, it can boost conversion rates up to 50%. I can check out in seconds. No typing in details, no friction. It's fast, secure, and helps businesses convert more sales. That means fewer abandoned carts and more customers following through. If you're serious about growth, your commerce platform has to work everywhere your customers are. Online, in-store, on social, and wherever attention lives. The best businesses sell more, and they sell with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout I use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/knowledge project. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/knowledge project to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/knowledge project. I think one thing that surprised a lot of people when I talked to friends who maybe casually follow sports, it was how much, Jordan's teammates had maybe a not love relationship with him always. And do you think that's true?
I wasn't around him enough to, to comment about that. But I think if you don't really like to compete, that a top competitor will kind of wear you down, and it kind of, I don't want to say resist to it, but, just to resist and compete at that level. I have seen that from time to time, but the guys that really love to compete, and they just join in there and compete with them.
One of the things you said in the book is you cannot win until you keep from losing, which reminds me of inversion from Charlie Munger. What does that mean in a football context?
Oh boy. Where do we start? Anything that prevents you from achieving your best, that you control. So it's not the opponent. It's something that happens internally. Examples would be, guys getting suspended for performance enhancing drugs, or guys that wouldn't hydrate and would pull muscle, pull a hamstring, pull a groin, pull a calf. Because they weren't fully hydrated. That's not Buffalo. That's not the Jets. That's us. That's us. And in the game, I'd say two of the biggest examples, well, there's a lot of them, but let's start with penalties. Pre-snap penalties. So penalties that happen before the ball snapped. Those are our fault. You can't blame them on the other team. False start, illegal motion, too many men on the field, delay a game. Like all that, that's our inefficiency. That's not our opponents. And really, for the most part, post-whistle penalties, plays that happen after the whistle has blown, hitting a guy out of bounds, taunting, illegal celebration, stuff like that, where you just get carried away emotionally in the moment and cost your team. Personal fouls, roughing a passer, roughing a punter, stuff like that really happens after the play is over. Those are examples of beating yourself. You can't win until you keep from losing. Those plays aren't because of what the opponent did. Those plays are because of either our lack of concentration, communication, discipline, whatever it happened to be. And I'm not just putting it on the players. I'll put it on the coaches too. That's our responsibility to eliminate those. And other things, turnovers, for example, when the offense turns the ball over, and the defense doesn't make a good play. It's just the offense fumbling a snap, fumbling a handoff. The ball goes off a receiver's hands, pops up in the air, and the defense intercepts it. Plays like that don't have anything to do really with good defense. The offense just gives the ball away. Snap the ball over the guy's head, the quarterback's head, snap it over the punter's head, drop the snap, stuff like that. Just plays that are poorly executed by us. So, as you can see, it's a long list, Shane. Some of them are off the field, and some of them are on the field. In college football would be, being academically ineligible. I mean, that's not your opponent's fault. That's a lack of commitment and doing the required academic work to be eligible to play. So those would all be examples of you can't win until you keep from losing. If you can eliminate all those things, then you can actually make progress on being a better football player and winning games.
I remember reading something a while ago, but the difference between being beaten and losing, and it sounds like what you're saying there is kind of hinting at that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We've always said more games are lost than won in the National Football League. And when I say lost, I'm saying those type of things: missed opportunities, missed assignments, poor clock management, just fumbling the situation more than the other team, really, really playing well to win. A lot of times, if you just kind of get out of the way and let the other team make a mistake, they'll make one and you can capitalize on it and take advantage. Now, not all the time. Again, as you go deeper into the season and play better teams and playoffs and things like that, that happens less frequently. But in a lot of close games, when you go back and really look at the way the outcome of the game was, the team that lost really probably should have won or had many good chances to win and just kind of messed it up. And more than, like I said, the winning team going out there and making all these spectacular plays. So again, the big thing is, number one, keep from losing. And number two, make the plays you're supposed to make. I mean, sure, there's some great plays out there, but before we get to the great plays, let's just make the plays that, you're supposed to make, just the regular ones, the normal ones. And that's execution, concentration, and discipline to do it all the time.
You tell your players to focus on the drawer to help them focus on what matters. What is the drawer and how does it help?
Drawer is was a saying that we use to, especially at the end of the year, like as you get into the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and then the playoffs, the end of the season's in sight, and wherever you are, you've put in, all the work back into the spring training camp, 10, 12, 14 regular season games, whatever it is. And now you're really coming down the home stretch. And the drawer was just a way of saying, unless it's a family or personal thing that's really important, put it in the drawer, dealing with it after the season. Do you need to go to sign these cards at the mall? Do you need to, go look for a new electronic, whatever it is? Can you put those things aside and just finish the season, spend that time on preparation for our opponents, spend that time on, rest, recovery, training, so that you're your absolute best when we really need you here in these last few stretch weeks. And as Shane, when you get to a certain point, it's a 1-game season. If you lose, you're done. And if you win, you get to play another week. So when you get into that scenario, put it off until next week. And if you're in it next week, put it off until the week after that. But this is what we've worked all year for. Put those things in the drawer and then open the drawer when the season's over. Now, we would joke about it, and, guys would say, "Hey, coach, my drawer is getting pretty full here. So you know what, maybe you need a bigger drawer, or maybe you need 2 drawers." But the idea was to put those things on the back burner and focus on the very special opportunity that we had in front of us, which was playoffs or championships.
One thing that seems to have evolved since you started coaching is that time becomes more fragmented now. Players have cell phones, they have more distractions. I don't have an hour to sit there and do a meeting. I have all these competing things for my attention. How have cell phones changed the locker room culture and made coaching easier or harder? Or technology in that way?
Well, first of all, we don't have cell phones and Apple Watches and things like that in our meetings, so that they're not part of the meetings. But when the meetings are over, a lot of times the guys race to see what, messages and texts and so forth are there. And my thing on that has always been, again, other than, family and very personal situations, the guys that are most important to each of us are the guys in that locker room. The guys that you win and lose with and live and die with each day, and that you count on them and they count on you. So it was really very important for us to focus on those relationships. And I tried to downplay the, how many likes or thumbs up or whatever you get on different social platforms. I don't even know what those are. But what's more important is what the guy next to you thinks about you, and the respect that you guys have for each other and the trust that you have in each other. And that's something that, on a football team, you earn every day. Every day you come to work as a coach, you earn the trust and respect of your players and your other coaches by being prepared, by showing that you're there to help the team and you can help the team win. And again, it's the same thing for every player. And when you earn that every day, you build that trust and you build a cohesive team. And when you don't, those are the players that, again, that other players don't trust as much. Is he going to run the right route? Is he going to be at the right depth? Is he going to block the right guy? Is he going to be in the right gap? And that causes, when you don't know what your teammate's going to do, that causes a lot of hesitation on your part. And you're kind of waiting to see what he's going to do instead of knowing what he's going to do. And then you can aggressively do your job because you're confident of the people beside you. And I learned a lot about that with especially with the Navy SEALs, those elite teams. I mean, Blue Angels would be another example. Those guys fly 18 inches apart, and the amount of trust and preparation and teamwork that's involved in something like that, going 600 miles an hour or whatever it is pretty amazing. But the SEALs, it's the same thing. Like, everybody's got a job to do, and you learn your teammates so well that you can, even in a dark room, pick out his silhouette or something about him that identifies him, and each of you count on each other to do their jobs and accomplish the missions. And that's obviously, that's at the highest level. Football, we're not talking about life and death here, but we are talking about the championship level of performance, of having that same type of trust and belief and confidence in your teammates, so that you're never questioning what they do, and you can be more aggressive in doing your job. And there's never that look over your shoulder of, is he where he's supposed to be? If he is, then you can perform better. So, those are kind of the themes that we try to instill there.
I remember talking to a Navy SEAL once, and he said, when things get hard, you're doing it for the person next to you when you want to quit or when you want to give up. Or how much of that is in football too?
I think there's definitely a carryover on that. You're playing for the team, but you're playing for the guy beside you too, and especially in a sport like football, or in a real battle situation like the SEALs are involved in. You're talking about potentially getting hurt or worse in a SEAL situation where, that guy beside you, like, you have to count on him to do his job and you do yours for the same reason, to protect each other.
One of your most famous press conferences, you said snap face or something. And I literally spit out my water when I heard you say that. I was listening to about social media. You're like, snap face or whatever the hell it is. Like,
yeah. Well, I've battled those social media platforms, and now I'm actually on one. So, college football has kind of changed that a little bit. I mean, I'm not too active on it, but I am on it. But again, I don't really have anything per se against social media. It's just, prioritizing it. And as I said, I think that in a football locker room, the relationships between the players, the team, and the coaches are paramount, more so than people you've never met or seen or heard of before, what their opinions are. And so I always, try to encourage our players to, not be too consumed with that, but, we'll worry about the guy next to you. That's the one that matters the most.
How is technology changing the way that players prepare, in the sense of, the story that comes to mind is sort of Jaden Daniels last year using VR to get more reps. Walk me through how technology is changing and where it's really impacting people who are willing to put in the work.
Yeah, that system that Jaden Daniels was referring to is one that he used at LSU and then also used with the Commanders last year. It's actually one that we have as well. It's one that's very hard to get. It's only available very selectively, and so I'm pretty familiar with it. And it's an incredible system. It enables you to see the game, in a pair of goggles, in real life, in real space. And it actually feels like you're getting hit. It feels like you're right in the middle of the game, but you're actually able to see things, what you do, and then you can program in what your opponents do to create a very realistic picture. And then you're also able to adjust the speed. So you could actually play the game at, let's call it 105 or 110% of the actual speed, so that theoretically you're having to react even quicker than you would in a real game situation. So I can see how that could really help, especially for skill positions like quarterback or positions like that where you have to see a lot of things very quickly and identify quickly what decision you're going to make. That's true of every position, but quarterback especially when you talk about distributing the ball, and also for a player who's injured. So let's just say that you had a leg injury and you weren't able to practice or run full speed for a couple of days. You could actually see the game through this product and get your recognition, your reads without actually having to run and be involved in a situation that physically you're just not ready for. But I'd say a lot of the other technology is just, things that maybe make it go a little bit faster, ways of grouping plays together, or grouping situations together that, allow you to research and analyze those things a little bit quicker. But that's probably about across the board, about the same for everybody. We all have the same opportunity on that. I mean, ultimately, a lot of those situations come down to preparation, but also maybe a gut feel of the way the game is going.
You said in your book, the price of success is paid in preparation, but you also said it was a way of working. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think the big thing about preparation and success is the price has to be paid in advance. You have to put in the work before you get any results. So there's no way to honestly know how good your preparation is or isn't. That's why I always try to emphasize, keep preparing, keep working. You don't know what the other guy's doing. He might be, working just as hard as you are. And that preparation, it can't be after the fact of like, oh, I wish I would have studied more. It's too late at that point. You have to do it on the front end. So, getting in condition, studying, preparing on your film and your opponents and all that, like those things are all have to be done on the front end. And, a lot of times, there's, I would say, a little bit of a tendency to just sort of let up on the preparation. Well, I've watched some film. Well, I've done some extra sprints. Well, I've done this, I've done that. Well, is that enough? Is it really enough? And if you do more, will it make a difference? Not to the point of diminishing returns, but to a point of, comprehensive preparation. So, that's really what we try to emphasize on that.
The way that I think about that is sort of the pain of losing is sharp, but it's over fairly quickly. But the pain of regret, not putting in the work, not doing the things, you didn't leave it all on the field, that lasts forever.
Exactly. That's exactly it. The pain of regret is much more than the pain of preparation. Absolutely.
I think you had a 24-hour rule, sort of after win or losses, you have 24 hours to think about it and then you move on. Is that?
That's right. Yeah, you play the game, you go back, you analyze it, what do we do well, what do we do poorly, what do we need to do better, what adjustments should we have made, what coaching errors did we make, and so forth. And then you factor all that into, how does that affect this next week? Sometimes there's a lot of carryover. Sometimes the team you play the following week is completely different. And some of those lessons may not really become applicable for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks until you see a similar type of opponent. Say like a scrambling quarterback, maybe you play 2 or 3 weeks where those quarterbacks aren't too mobile. And then when you get up against another scrambling quarterback, you go back and look at, how do we need to handle this better, against this type of an opponent? So, but yeah, you look at all those things after 24 hours, win or lose or draw, you take your lessons and you decide how you're going to incorporate any of those things into this week's preparation and practice, what we're going to do differently or maybe do more of or do less of, whatever it is. And then you're done with that and you move on to your opponent and spend the next 5 days, 6 days, whatever it is, of just, digging in on that opponent and what they do.
Talk to me about the relationship between the best talent in the world and, you're playing in the NFL, you're coaching in the NFL, and confidence.
Well, again, it's all relative, Shane. I mean, as good as the players are in the NFL, the guys on the other side of the ball are pretty good too. And, I'd say every team, generally speaking, every team has about, 5 or 6 players that are elite, have elite payments, elite contracts. Mm-hmm. And then you might have some younger players in their first through fourth year, two or three, four, whatever of those that are elite players that just haven't hit those top contracts yet. But they don't necessarily match up in the same position. You might have a tackle, I might have a guard, you might have a linebacker, I might have a corner, and so forth. The way those elite players match up is very specific from game to game, and how you want to match them, your matches against theirs, and how you want to deal with that is, that's a big part of it. I think the confidence thing is really interesting. I think what really separates the great players is their ability to do it even when the bullseye's on their back every week. Like it was with Tom Brady, like it was with Lawrence Taylor, like it is with Patrick Mahomes, like it is with, players like that, Lamar Jackson and so forth. Every week, the teams are geared towards stopping those players and game planning against them, or putting their best guy on them, or however you're going to handle them. And for those players to continue to be productive in spite of the game plan attention they get is what truly makes those players, great and elite. And I think that, when we had Kobe Bryant come in and talk to our team, I think it was around 2018, 19, somewhere in there. And, Kobe talked a lot about evolving, and he said, look, when I was 22, 23, I could just get the ball and drive by anybody and score. And he said, I can't do that anymore. I still score, but I found different ways to score, moving without the ball, jump shots, and, being better in pick situations and all those kind of things. That, he said, I found ways to evolve my game because I just couldn't do the things I used to be able to do as well. But there are other things I found that I can actually do better. And I thought that was a great message for all of us to hear, that as we, as we go through our careers, do the things that are working, do the things that you can do well, but also evolve, continue to learn, continue to, find ways to be productive that are maybe a little out of your comfort zone, or are not, habitual for you now. But if you can become good at them, they can be great tools for you.
Are there any other people that you brought to speak from sort of different sports that sort of had a different message that resonated with you or the team and just stands out in your mind?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of them. Yeah, we had a lot of them, and it was great because just the guys, they hear a lot of football stories, but it's good to hear other ones. One of the ones I thought was particularly entertaining, a couple of them. One was Paul Asciante. They won like 14 national championships in a row. They won like 160 some games in a row, matches in a row. I mean, and at the Patriots, we were favored in almost every game, not every game, but most every game for quite a while. And so, I brought Coach Asciante in and I said, here's a guy who's won like 13 straight national championships. They won 160 some matches in a row. I mean, you talk about being favored now, like they're favored. And like, let's listen to what that's really like. And he was great. He talked about it doesn't matter whether you are or aren't, or how many you have or haven't won. Every day is an opportunity. You make the most out of each day, and you just get better each day. And you don't worry about what you've done in the past. You look at today's opportunity and make the most out of it. It was great. So one of our players sticks his hand up and said, "Hey, Coach, I have a question. What's squash? I thought it was a vegetable." And Jimmy Johnson, we were going into the playoffs, and Jimmy came up and he was doing a story on somebody. And I said, "Hey, would you mind, talking to the team?" He said, "Sure." So he said, "Yeah, let me tell you a little playoff story here. When I was in Dallas, we were getting ready for the playoffs, and we were in a special teams meeting. I'm standing in the back, and I see one of our players back there kind of dozing off and not paying attention. And he said he wasn't a starter, but he played in special teams. And he said it just really annoyed me. And so I went over, I flipped on the lights, turned the lights on in the meeting. And I went over to him. I said, 'That's it. You fall asleep in this meeting. We don't want you. This is your primary job. You take your playbook and go see the general manager. You're done. You're cut.'" And everybody like, whoa, that woke everybody up. And it was right before the playoffs. So, any questions? Yeah, Coach. What would you have done if that had been Troy Aikman? Jimmy said, "Well, I wouldn't have turned on the lights. I probably would have gone over to him and nudged him and said, like, hey, Troy, pay attention. And the message was, if you have a lot of pelts on the wall, you might have a little more slack. If you don't have a lot of pelts on the wall, you don't have any room. You don't have any room. You can't live on what you've done because you haven't done enough. You better know where you are. And if you're Troy Aikman and Tom Brady, but he goes, those guys would never do that anyway. But you might be able to survive that. But if you don't have that kind of resume, you haven't had that kind of production for this team. So nobody wants that. You're replaceable. They'll find somebody else who will stay awake in the meetings and who will be more attentive. And it's pretty funny. I'd just nudge them and say, hey, pay attention.
Did you treat everybody the same? I remember one story, and maybe it's just sort of the press doing the press thing, but where you sent Darrelle Revis home from practice because he was like 2 minutes late or something.
Oh, we had a few of those. Yeah, we had a few of those. And honestly, those are tough ones, Shane, because when you send a player home, it hurts the team. It doesn't just hurt the player, it hurts the team because, you need the timing and the communication and the teamwork out there. But I try to treat them all the same, but I do think Jimmy Johnson, I believe that, and Coach Parcells, same thing. Yeah, did the same thing. There were certain players got a little more grace than others based on, what they had done for us, and they, I would say, kind of earned that. So I tried not to do that, but there were times when I did. But I try to treat everybody the same, even though they're not all the same. But you certainly want everybody to feel that, we're all team members, and it's not, we don't have an elite society here. We have different ranks, and certain players can do some things and other players couldn't. So I try to make it as consistent as possible, but at the same time, I think you have to be flexible in a professional football environment for some latitude and maybe for some, it's called exceptions to your rules.
You sent one player home from the Super Bowl for having somebody in his hotel room. Was that a hard decision, or was that how did you make that? Was that team first and you violated the rules, you're out, or?
I made it very clear before we went down there that, it was a business trip, and yeah, we had a great year, and we were all celebrating the Super Bowl and what we had accomplished to get there. But here are the rules, and you don't have to break the rules. Go to the other person's room if you want to be with them, but our floors are secure. And at the Super Bowl in particular, there's a good reason for that. With Super Bowl tickets and guys with valuables and stuff like that. If it's not one of our players on the floor, I don't know whether that person is a friend of our players or an intruder. There's really no way to know. And no matter what, unless I knew the person for some reason, but you know what I mean? You just don't know who that person is. So our policy was players only on the floor, period. That's it. And so, it was unfortunate because I wasn't trying to say, hey, you can't have guests or you can't, be with your friends or your companions or anything. That wasn't it. It's just, don't do it on that floor. Do it somewhere else. I don't care. And again, I was trying to protect the players by not having people on our floor that we didn't know, that could roam in and out of rooms or could, and if you don't remove those people, then you end up with, potentially somebody leaves their room and that person walks in and then you have a big mess on your hands. So that was our policy, not just in that game, but everywhere. But unfortunately, because that game was, we were there for 5 days, I just felt like it was a blatant violation of our rule.
I want to come back to confidence for a sec. One of the follow-ups I meant to ask, was there ever a moment where you had your confidence shaken, and how did you handle that?
Oh, plenty of times. I mean, honestly, Shane, there were times when, I wasn't sure if we were going to win another game the entire year, and, we ended up winning a lot of them, but sometimes you just see problems and maybe you want to fix them, but you just don't have the resources to fix them, or you've tried a couple different things and it still isn't really the way you want it, and you can see in the future some real problems coming up with your opponents and some matchups and whatever the case might be. And you're like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm trying to fix this, but I just don't feel very confident that we actually are going to be able to handle it the way we need to. And ultimately, you know, in most cases, it wasn't maybe as bad as what I thought it might be. I was expecting the worst, and that usually didn't happen. So that's a good thing. But yeah, I don't know if that's a lack of confidence or I don't know what the exact word is, but yeah, you definitely have those apprehensions. And certainly opening day is a difficult day because you don't know very much about your team. You don't know very much about your opponent's team. And unless you have a really veteran team, you don't know exactly how the team is going to react in certain situations, particularly tough and critical and competitive situations. So, you know, even though you have a good team, how are they going to react when, you know, you're really in a really a tight ball game? And that's something that you don't know until you've been in a few. Unless you've been in a few with those guys and it's the same guys.
When you first started in the NFL, you worked for nothing. You worked part-time for nothing, and then you switched to full-time for nothing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you said was, I did anything and everything. And I think of this as like a taste for salt water. You do the hard things, but you were snapping the football, but you were like, oh, the benefit was I got to listen to the coach talk to the QB. And walk me through like how that's changed today and what people miss when they hyper specialize.
Well, I think one thing that I see with, you know, some of our younger staff members, coaches and things like that is they're very concerned about their title. You know, can I get this title? Can I get that title? And the coaches of, you know, can I be the run game coordinator? Can I be the blitz coordinator? Can I be the zone coverage coordinator? Can I be it's like, what are those titles for? Like, they don't impress me. I know what your job is. I mean, do you need that title to, you know, validate what you're doing? Or is it for somebody else? And I'm not really interested in helping somebody else. I mean, we all know what we do here. I mean, honestly, I was a general manager for almost 30 years of my NFL career, and I never had a general manager title. And that was never important to me. I doesn't care about what the title is. You do the job that you have to do. So I see that. But for me, when I look back at it retrospectively, Shane, the big thing was I was so low on the totem pole that I did all the jobs at the very bottom of the organization. I shot film. I lined the fields. I moved equipment out there. I ran off Xerox copies. I, you know, made notebooks. I sharpened pencils. I did all those things. And as you move up in the organization, it really helped me because I understood how everything functioned, you know, at the level of, you know, making things work, you know, deliveries and, you know, mail and stuff like that. I mean, all those things that needed to happen. I understood kind of the process of it, how it worked, and what was hard about those jobs and what wasn't hard about those jobs. And as I, you know, gained more responsibility in the organization, I was always able to show appreciation for the people that were doing those. Like, hey, I know this is really hard, or hey, I know this is a tough week. I could sense what you're going through. And I think that built some, you know, camaraderie and trust there. But also, it helped me understand how everything worked. And there were multiple times when people would come to me and say, oh, coach, we can't do this. You know, we can't do this. We can't do that. And I said, wait a minute, I've done that job before. We can do that. Here's how you do it. This is how you make this work. And so I felt very confident about all the aspects of the organization, how they fit together, and, you know, scouting and coaching, and like I said, equipment and video and security and travel and all those things, because I was a part of those in one form or another at different points in my career. So I think, you know, for a lot of people, you know, when I talk about we need to start at the bottom, you really need to understand how the organization works. There's a lot I want to skip those steps. I just want to jump up and coach the linebackers or the tight ends or whatever it is. And that's okay, but it would really help you to understand what happens in the entire organization And if you want to really move up and become a coordinator and a head coach, those will be very valuable for you because you'll understand, the different intersections of various departments and how the organization works and where the conflicts are, and sometimes you just, kind of two people doing the same thing or nobody doing one thing and you miss that intersection somehow. And that's just part of it. But, how do you avoid those and how do you make that more efficient? So I really try to encourage the younger people, to do those jobs and embrace them. Don't, how quickly can I get done with this so I can go do something else? No, embrace the job and embrace the process and understand it because it's going to help you in the long run. And the other thing is, as I mentioned a couple of times in the book with, Josh McDaniels and Nick Caserio and Brian Dable, if somebody has one of those jobs and they're really good at it, and they say, well, I want to move you, I want to move to more responsibility. And I said, well, I want you to move to more responsibility too. But first you got to train somebody to do your job because what you're doing is really valuable. And that's when Brian Dable hired Josh McDaniels to replace him. That's when Josh McDaniels hired Nick Caserio to replace him. And so, but it forced those guys to make sure that the person that was replacing them was not only good, but they trained them to do the things the way they needed to be done. And that really heightened our efficiency, but also enabled them to move up to responsibility. And so that really worked out well. I was, I thought that was, for me, that was a good way to handle it because those guys were very invested in making sure their replacement did a good job because they knew they were going back to do that job if their replacement failed.
A lot of people, when you ask them to do sort of the unglorious task, they just look at you and say, that's not my job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not my job or I'll get to it, tomorrow, or I'll get to it next week or whatever. And those are, I mean, I don't like to have those type of people, around. Sometimes it's inevitable. You have to put something off. I mean, I get that, but, the quicker you get it done, the quicker you can move on to something else and be more productive. And, the more you procrastinate it, then, it just slows everything down. So, there's got to be a priority system. I mean, I'm fully aware of that, but, but people that want to put stuff off and kind of hope that it won't need to get done, they didn't do very well in our organization.
One thing you mentioned that stands out to me, I think of this like stepping stones where people have a job, but they see it as a stepping stone to the next job.
Right.
And so they're never fully present in the job that they're doing because they're always looking ahead. And those people don't actually tend to do very well at the next level.
Absolutely. And like I said, then they miss some of the things that they really need to understand at the level that they're at. And again, that's just part of do your job. It's just part of it is everybody has an important job to do. And if you're trying to do somebody else's, then you're probably not doing yours well enough. And, be patient and your opportunities will come, as long as, you show that you can handle the responsibilities that you currently have. But you're right. A lot of times there's a big rush to move ahead and that, a lot of times also brings sloppy work, incomplete work. And honestly, just a feeling that not really confident promoting that person because, they're more interested in what they are going to be doing than what we need to do right now.
How would you define discipline?
Discipline is doing the right thing over and over again, doing it every time. It's just continuing to do it every time. In the National Football League, the players are very skilled and talented and I would say, all of them can do something. They can all go out there and produce, plays at a very high level. The discipline is what really separates the players is their consistency and their discipline to do it over and over again. So you can count and depend on them, at a very high rate.
Are there any stories in your mind that stand out about discipline or consistency involving players you've coached?
Well, I mean, I told the story of Edelman, catching balls before the Super Bowl, tennis balls and stuff like that. I mean, those kind of things that, that players do, they have a routine. And, if a guy's played 8, 9, 10, whatever years, If they skip a day in their routine, I mean, is it going to be the end? Probably not. But they're just so disciplined and so consistent to just continue to do it, and maybe even do just a little tiny bit more to make sure that they're prepared for the game, especially the big games. That's just who they are. So, I mean, I really respect that. But it's a little bit like the shopping cart. When nobody's looking, are you going to take the shopping cart back and put it in the, where it belongs, or just leave it there in the middle of the parking lot? And it's the same thing with a really disciplined player and teammate. Is he going to be disciplined to, go in and get treatment after practice, even though it's 2 days before Christmas or, whatever it is? Where is he just disciplined to not let something get in the way of his productive routine? And that's, the guys that do that, I would say for the most part, have had very long and productive careers. And the guys that haven't have careers that go to a certain point with talent, but they don't have the same kind of longevity and consistency of a player like Matt Slater or Devin McCourty or Tom Brady or guys like that people keep saying you just keep waiting for those guys to drop off. Well, they're a year older, they're a year older, but you don't see the drop off because their routine and their discipline is so consistent that they're able to sustain that level of performance, far longer than really what the expectations in some cases are.
Do you believe you can motivate people? And if so, how?
Oh, I think you can definitely motivate them, and it depends on the person. I think there are different types of motivation. We could, there were times where I think you could really, motivate a player by just, flat out challenging them, based on something that, somebody else said or intimated or something that might have happened in the past. I think you can, motivate people by, especially, sometimes maybe a more selfish type of player, you could motivate by, making him see what the reward is for himself as opposed to the team. An example I like to use, Shane, is if you have a receiver and you want the receiver to come in and block on a running play and come in and block a safety, which is a hard job. Some receivers don't really want to do that. They're really not too excited about that. They want to catch passes. But if you say, well, look, if you come in and block this guy, and we need you to block him as a team, we need you to block him. If you come in and block this guy, then the next time we come in and you'll do the same thing, but fake it, and we'll be able to throw you a pass when the defense comes up to stop the play. Well, the player's not coming in to block him because you asked him to block him, and we really need you to block him. Julian Edelman would do that, but not everybody would necessarily do that. But when they understand, okay, if I come in and do it this time, that opens up an opportunity for me the next time, then they might do it, right? And so now I get what I want, he gets what he wants. There's some management and motivation in there, but in the end, both parties are able to accomplish their goals. I get the team goal, the player gets the individual goal, he sacrifices for the team, but for the other reasons. I think there are different methods of doing that. It really depends on, how the player's wired and maybe what circumstances, you can use. Certainly when you've lost to a team previously, that's a pretty good motivator for most of these guys, because, you take those losses personally. And since we lost as a team, that is everybody. It's not, one guy got a pass caught on him or one guy got tackled. I mean, it's a full team loss. So a lot of times you can generate a lot of energy towards your opponent by referencing that loss or situation that might have happened in a previous encounter.
As a leader, how did you know when to be hard on players and when to sort of back off? And I'm thinking, when a player makes a critical mistake in a game and they know they've made a mistake, what's your role in that moment?
Well, again, Shane, I think it depends on the mistake. If it's sometimes, something that kind of unexpectedly happens and maybe the player made a bad decision or maybe he did something that, he's caught that pass 100 times and he's dropped it once, and this is the one time. Some of those are a little easier to handle. I'd say the ones where, you've told the player 10 times, this is what you need to do when this happens, and then they don't do it. I'd say the reaction is a little bit different in that situation. How many times do you have to be told? And you know what, maybe, you just don't want to do it. We'll put somebody else in there to do it, because I can see that, you're not, you just don't care enough to follow your assignment. So, it kind of depends on those. I think one of the biggest things in football is correcting mistakes, and we all make a lot of them. But when during the game, when time is of the essence and you don't have much time, you need to figure out what went wrong pretty quickly and fix it. So, let's say defensively, we came off the field and we'd given up a 20-yard run, and maybe a 15-yard pass and another third down conversion. And you say, okay, all right, like, what are the issues on these plays? Well, let's say the 15-yard run would be, if one person knows that they messed the play up and just says, hey, it's my fault, I messed it up. Like, we were in good shape. I was right there. I should have made the tackle. I just missed the tackle. I'll make that play the next time. Well, great. That clears it up for everybody. We all know we're going to do the same thing we did the last time. And this time I know that, my teammate's going to make the tackle versus, kind of a blame game where, well, I was here. I don't know. I should have been there. And should I do this? And should I do that? And was I too deep? And this and that. And then it's, what's the issue? How do we fix it? Right. And so if you did something wrong, just own it. All right. Admit it and let's move on. Sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes you kind of have to figure out, well, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. You did what you were supposed to do. He did what he was supposed to do. We still had a problem. Okay. Now that needs to be fixed. And so, but again, identifying mistakes and fixing them quickly is really the name of the game. And if, as a coach, when I would say, look, that play was a bad call. I shouldn't have called that defense against that personnel group or against that formation. That's my fault. It's on me. I'm not going to do that again. Forget about that play. It's not going to come up again because I won't call it again in that situation. Okay, well then, all right. Well, so stop worrying about that play. Let's worry about something else. So owning up to those mistakes and making the corrections is key. If you don't know what it is exactly, then that's when you have to figure it out pretty quickly, whether those are players or coaches or some combination. Because if you don't, you're just going to keep dealing with the same issue over and over again. And, none of us want that.
When I say the words "on to Cincinnati," what does that mean to you?
On to Cincinnati. Well, it first of all means it was a long night in Kansas City. We got totally beaten in that game. Out-coached, outplayed, out everything. They were just a far superior team than we were. And as a head coach, you have to look at that and say, I didn't have our team, where they should have been, and we didn't play well. We didn't do anything well. And it starts with me. But that game's in the books. It's over, and there's nothing we can do about it. We can't get it back. So, or we just have to move on to Cincinnati and make sure that we don't perform next week like we did last week. Don't let one game become 2 bad games. Don't let it become 3 bad games. Don't let it become a habit. Change the things that we need to change. So, we played Cincinnati the following week, and, our players did a great job of putting the Kansas City game behind us and focusing on what we needed to improve on and do better and get ready for Cincinnati, who was, a very good football team as well at that time. And so, we're able to do that. And, it became, one of those catchphrases, but, really the idea of it was move on and let's start getting ready for next week. It's kind of similar to the situation we had in, 2001, Shane, where we buried the ball. We lost to Miami. We didn't play very well. Obviously didn't coach very well. And we came back and, we just took the team out there. I got a shovel. I dug a hole. I took the ball. We put it in the ground. We put the dirt on the ball. We stomped on it. We spit on it. We kicked it. We, took our frustrations out. But that was the funeral. Game's over. It's done. We lost. Buried the ball. Buried our feelings. Move on. I'm not saying that was, this great thing, but visually it's sort of, the point of it was put the game out of your mind. It's over. We've had the funeral. Life goes on.
I've heard you say we're building a team, not collecting talent. What's the difference?
The difference is it fits together so that the team is functionally as efficient as it can be. Not just a bunch of guys wearing the same uniform with different numbers, but a group of people who function well together, as a team. And when you think about football, Shane, football is a team of teams, right? You have the offense, you have the defense, you have a hands team, you have a punt return team, you have a nickel defense, you have a dime defense, you have a goal line offense, and so forth. You have all these teams, and they all come together to form one championship team. And so, the idea is whichever team you're on, you need to be the very best team that you can be in that situation. If it's a hands team, if it's a punt return team, whatever it is, like that is critical to our success. And you have your responsibilities on that team. I have my responsibilities on some different teams, but ultimately we all come together, and those shared responsibilities and those shared teams, so that we can operate together functionally as a team are really what we're trying to accomplish. So it's not just getting a bunch of guys who, have good skills, and can run fast and jump high or whatever. I mean, that helps, of course, but they have to be able to operate as a team and as a team of teams. And, a lot of that is a mentality, is a willingness to communicate and work with and efficiently cooperate with your teammates so that collectively we can accomplish our goals when our unit's out on the field.
How has coaching changed in the past 5 years?
Outside of rules changes and things like that, there are some trends. And, I think when you're on defense, you have to react to the offense, right? If the offense has three tight ends on the field, you're not going to be playing the same defense that you had when they have three receivers on the field. So defensively, a lot of what you have to deal with. Now you can say, look, we're going to play the same thing and make them adjust to us. But I mean, there are certain matchups that just become, difficult to sustain that philosophy. So, again, what I'd say is it's important to defensively be able to adapt to what the offense is doing, because ultimately you don't control who they put on the field. You just have to stop them. Offensively, you take the talent that you have and try to make the most of it. So, I would say in college football, which is where we get our resources from in the NFL, some of that's a function of what's available, what's coming out, what they're teaching in college, what type of players they're developing, because that's really what you have to choose from. So I do think there are some trends, but fundamentally it really comes down to, having good, solid fundamentals, and doing the little things right that will enable you to win your one-on-one matchups. And I'd say I don't think those have changed too dramatically over the years.
On the way out of the building, you had a sign that read, "Ignore the noise, manage expectations, speak for yourself, and don't believe the fuel or hype." Can you walk me through those?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, speak for yourself is pretty obvious. If you have any comments to make, just make them, personally. Don't say things like, well, Shane's looking really good this year. I mean, he should probably have 15 sacks the way he's rushing the passer, and start making expectations and predictions for other people, things like that. Ignore the noise. I mean, there's so much airtime that's filled, whether it's on the radio, on the internet, on TV, of people talking about football, all right, and players and matchups and everything. And again, with all due respect, and look, I've been part of that too, so I understand. But, with all due respect, the people that talk about it haven't been in our building. They haven't watched us practice. They haven't watched us prepare for the game. They don't know what our matchups are. They don't know what, they don't know what our game plan is. So with all due respect, what they say as it relates to us, it doesn't matter. If other fans want to listen to them, I mean, that's great. But, when they say, well, Shane Parrish has got to shut down Belichick or they're going to lose, that's, it's just hot air. So ignore the noise. It's just ignore what other people who aren't really don't know what they're talking about are saying, and focus on what the people in our building, in this room, are saying, what your teammates are saying, how you can communicate with them, how you can anticipate a play and help them react to it, and that kind of thing. Don't feel the hype. When things are going good, I mean, people can't wait to, you're 3-0 and they're selling Super Bowl tickets and they're already talking about, repeats and all this stuff. And our thing was, don't add into that. If other people say it, we can't control that. Once we say it, now we have to own it, and so Belichick says, we should be in the AFC Championship game and we've only played 4 games. Well, then everybody else has to react to that. Shane, what do you think about what Belichick said? Tom, what do you think about what Belichick said? Gronk, what do you think about, it just creates a distraction. So fueling the hype or believing the hype that 4 games into the season, we're talking about an AFC Championship game is ridiculous. It's just way too premature. So, don't deal with that one. What was the last one? Ignore the noise. Don't fuel the hype. Speak for yourself.
Manage expectations.
Manage expectations, right. And so, what are realistic expectations? This week, it's to beat the team we're playing. Our focus is on beating Buffalo this week. That's who we play. That's where we're at. In terms of winning the division, which is 8 weeks away from now, don't talk about winning the division. That's not an expectation. We can't achieve that right now, even if we wanted to. It's only the 4th game of the year. Now, if this was the game to win the division, then okay, let's talk about winning the division. But until we get to that point, manage the expectations. The expectations are to have a good day today, have a good week, and to win this game. Those are our weekly, expectations. Not where we're going to be in January, who we're going to play in the playoffs, or again, managing expectations of this guy should go out and, he should have 2,000 yards receiving. Why don't you just worry about what you're going to do and, stop talking about what your expectations are for them. That's speaking for yourself, but that's also managing expectations, or a player saying, well, I expect to go to the Pro Bowl. Well, is that your goal, to go to the Pro Bowl, or is our goal to win a championship? And let's go back here for a minute. What are our expectations? Let's think about what's first things first. Put the team first, and that's, teammate, self. That was the whole, progression of, trying to put the priorities in order for each of us.
I want to end, I usually end with one question about success, but I actually want to change that a little bit here and flip that around. And I want to talk about the Atlanta Super Bowl. You're down 28-3. And the thing that astounded me as a fan who's watched a lot of football and a lot of games was that nobody was sort of hanging their head. You look at Brady on the sideline, you're down 25 points and he still had confidence.
Yeah, Shane, it's funny. Sometimes you play a game and you feel like you have control of the game, but you don't have control of the score. And that was that game. I felt like we had pretty good control of the game, but we didn't control the score at all. There are other games where you have control of the score and you don't have control of the game. Maybe you're ahead by 10 points, but, they fumbled, they threw an interception, you got a lucky break, and you're ahead, but you really haven't been able to move the ball. You really haven't been able to stop them. They've just fumbled it away a couple times, and you kind of maybe got a lucky play to get your points. And so you feel like you don't have control of the game, but you're ahead on the scoreboard. And what you really want, of course, is to have control of the game and control of the score. But in that game, we had a real confidence at halftime when it was 21-3 that, we'd given up a touchdown on a 3rd and goal from the 12. We gave up a pick 6. We fumbled going in. We missed some opportunities to maybe be tied, or could have even been ahead in the game at halftime, 10-7 or maybe 10-10, something like that. And so, yeah, the score was bad, but we felt like we had control of the game. Well, then they go out and score, make it 28-3. And now I'm thinking, we might have control of the game, but 25 points is a lot to make up. And there's a lot of things that have to go right. So 2 2-point conversions and a strip sack and 2 kickoffs where we tackled them inside the 15-yard line so they couldn't get into field goal range, and another sack and another holding penalty. And literally everything went right for us in the last, 20 minutes of the game. There was no lack of confidence because we actually felt like we had control of the game. We were moving the ball. We were playing good defense, but we just had a couple of bad plays in there that skewed us and skewed the score. But once that kind of settled down, we were okay. And then once we kind of got rolling again, we had some plays that we needed to make and we made them, on both sides of the ball and in the kicking game on those kickoffs. So, everything had to go right and it did. And we were very fortunate in that one.
I really appreciate you taking the time today, Coach Belichick, and thank you for writing The Art of Winning. I loved reading it. It was a great read.
Thanks, Shane. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be on. It was a pleasure. Enjoyed speaking with you, and I look forward to catching up down the road. I just would be remiss if I didn't, say how much Michael Lombardi has contributed to my career and indirectly to this book. I mean, a lot of the things that we talk about and I talk about here are things that I share with Mike or that Mike helped me do. And it's great to be able to work with Mike, at North Carolina. But he's a great motivator, very well organized, very efficient, and is an excellent partner to build the program down there. So I really appreciate all of not only Mike's help but his guidance and his the daily coach and the the motivation that he puts out on a daily basis is something that we all look forward to and enjoy at Carolina.
I'm looking forward to getting down there and watching it again.
Look forward to having you, Shane. His rookie year, he had 3 players ahead of him, and
thanks for listening and learning with us. Be sure to sign up for my free weekly newsletter at fs.blog/newsletter. The Farnham Street website is also where you can get more info on our membership program, which includes access to episode transcripts, my repository, ad-free episodes, and more. Follow myself and Farnham Street on X, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay in the loop. If you like what we're doing here, leaving a rating and review would mean the world. And if you really like us, sharing with a friend is the best way to grow this community. Until next time.